Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today. Yesterday, New York Mayor Eric Adams decided to lift the vaccine mandate on entertainers and athletes. And when he decided to lift the vaccine mandate only for entertainers and athletes, he made the biggest mistake of his political career. Now, your Eric Adams has been stumbling out of the gate from day one, and the main reason why he's been stumbling out of the gate is because he's trying to preserve the failed legacy of former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio. And former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio insisted on enforcing a vaccine mandate on private businesses, insisting that in order to work in New York City, you needed to be vaccinated against COVID-19. And this policy has led to hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers being put out of work or being able to access the job market here only in New York City. Because New York City is the only market where a person needs to have a vaccination card in order to work in the entire United States and even the entire world. And many thought that your Eric Adams would have the common sense to end this jab mandate, but your Eric Adams insisted on continuing this policy and continuing a policy that has practically alienated him from many of the constituents here in New York City. Now, your Eric Adams has been under a lot of pressure as related to the New Jersey Nets player Kyrie Irving being able to play because he wasn't vaccinated. And it's clear from everybody's perspective now that your Eric Adams is showing some racial bias, because while your black Kyrie Irving was denied an opportunity to play for 3 months here in New York City under Eric Adams' term, when baseball season started and the white owners of the Yankees and the Mets wanted to be able to have their unvaccinated players play, your Eric Adams quickly reversed policy. Unfortunately, when he reversed policy, he showed that he clearly is favoring your white players. Moreover, he is also showing cowardice because before he went out here and reversed on that policy as related to these mandates, he then hid behind his health commissioner by having them say that the workplace mandate would remain in place indefinitely. Now, this whole policy is starting to show that it isn't about the science, and it's actually about the politics as related to these mandates. Because how is it scientifically logical for an unvaccinated basketball player or a baseball player to work here in New York City, but not an average, everyday, working class individual like a teacher, like a daycare worker, like a fast food worker? If it's possible for an unvaccinated basketball player or an entertainer to go out here and work and make a living, then how is it scientifically logical for that other working class individual, like a teacher, a doctor, or a nurse, or an engineer, or any fast food worker, to be able to work here in New York City? This is where the logic doesn't make sense, because you're telling us to trust the science as related to COVID, but you're letting unvaccinated baseball players and basketball players be able to go out here and play baseball and basketball, and you're allowing your entertainers to go out here and entertain. That does not make logical sense if we're talking about trusting the science. In fact, what you're showing us that this, again, is not about science. This is all about politics, and it's all about a politician who has basically painted himself into a corner because he was too busy out here looking to bootlick and gain favor with failed politicians like Bill de Blasio. That is the only reason why your Eric Adams continues to hold on to this jab mandate, is because he's looking to gain favor with politicians, because he's too afraid to stand up and be a leader, and because he's too afraid to stand up and be a leader on a simple policy, he's looking to try to follow others and looking to create covert contracts with them, hoping to impress those individuals. Unfortunately, as he tries to impress those politicians, what he's doing is making himself look weaker in the eyes of every politician out here, because if he cannot go out here and solve a simple problem as related to a dysfunctional policy, then it shows that he is not fit for leadership. Because any critical thinking mayor out here who understands long-term impacts of policies would have understood that Bill de Blasio's jab mandate on private businesses was not a good policy, and it wasn't a good policy because, one, it keeps the city from being able to collect taxes, because with your city not being able to collect taxes, it's not able to generate revenue. And two, when you have a policy like this in place, it does not foster goodwill with the business community. So if you're in a city and you want to go out here and generate revenue, which is what any good executive officer of a city like a mayor wants to do, you don't want to create policies that are detrimental to you generating revenue. And you don't want to create policies that alienate people like this jab mandate policy, and you don't want to further exacerbate that policy by going out here and creating divisions where you show bias towards your celebrities and you show bias towards athletes. When you go out here and show that bias, it's basically throwing up a middle finger up at the constituents who went out here and voted for you, and it's basically expressing contempt towards all of those people who voted for you. And that's why many people here in New York don't see Eric Adams as the purveyor of change that he talked about in the campaign. They're seeing him as a failure as related to being the mayor of New York, because he is not showing strong leadership out of the gate, and because he's not showing strong leadership out of the gate on a policy that just needed to have been ended. He's showing us that he cannot go out here and solve the problems as related to New York City, because this whole jab mandate controversy, it should not have gone on for almost 4 months. No, this policy should have ended on January 1st, 2022. And if your Eric Adams had the backbone and the stones, he would have ended that policy on January 1st, 2022, and he would have gone out here and let New York get back to business as usual. Unfortunately, because he's a beta male looking to follow the lead of other white males, he shows us he doesn't have the courage to go out here and do what is right. No, instead of having the courage to do what is right, he wants to try to think that he can follow somebody else's lead and go follow behind somebody else's policy, and this will get him favor. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten him much favor, and he's turned a simple policy into a disaster and a debacle of a situation, because again, the solution was very simple. All he had to do was go out here and say, these mandates are over. That was the old mayor, and I'm going to put a period at the end of things, and I'm going to show that I'm serious about change. But instead of showing that he's serious about change, he looked to gain favor with leftists that are higher up, and that looking to gain favor with those leftists that were higher up led to him alienating much of New York's whole political base. And this base is further getting alienated because they're seeing that your Eric Adams has bias towards the wealthy owners of Major League Baseball and will give them favor and give entertainers favor over working New Yorkers. Now, this has alienated many in the unions and many who are everyday working New Yorkers, because many working New Yorkers and many in the unions are clearly seeing that this policy, again, is not about science. they are seeing that there is nothing here but political bias, and that political bias is all about trying to go after, I believe, possibly people who disagree with this policy. And again, that's not something that anybody is allowed to do under our United States Constitution. Now, the Supreme Court has already stated that you cannot deny a person employment as related to this jab. And if the U.S. Supreme Court has made this the law of the land, then it's clearly time for everybody to take this case to federal court, because this jab mandate isn't about health. No, it's clearly about politics. And it's clear to me that this whole effort to talk about science is making no logical sense, because if a person who is unvaccinated can work in any other part of the United States and any other part of the world, then they have a constitutional right to work here in New York City. And no health commissioner can put a mandate that denies a person employment indefinitely, because there is no scientific data to prove that your COVID-19 is different in New York City if it's the same in the rest of the world. Because if a person who is unvaccinated can work in a red state or a other blue state which has lifted the mandates, like in Boston and Chicago, then a person can work here in New York City. And that is where your Eric Adams has painted himself into a very bad corner, because he now has proven that this whole mandate is not about science. It is about feelings, and it is all about a mayor looking to gain approval with certain politicians on the left, like your Bill de Blasio, who are practically gone at this point. And it's no longer about going out here and keeping people safe. No, it is about impeding people's employment, because one party has some feelings about that somebody disagreeing with a policy, and it's all about trying to control people. So when I look at your Eric Adams, he's basically put a torpedo as related to his political career, because he decided to hold on to a failed policy, and by holding on to that failed policy, he has breached the trust of New Yorkers, who he promised to bring change to New York City. But instead of bringing change, he has shown us that he is the face of corruption, and he has also shown us that he is nothing more than a cowardly bootlick looking to gain favor with white leftists and those who would offer him some sort of higher political position. And he's not about working towards accomplishing the goals of the job. Now, if your Eric Adams were a smart man, he would end all of these mandates, because basically he's embarrassed himself in front of all of those higher ups he tried to impress. And when he went out here and kept this mandate in place for 3 months, he has shown them that he is not fit for leadership. Basically, this beta male has shown us that he's nothing more than a mangina, and this mangina is, like in my book, Manginas, they look like men but they act like ladies, creating elaborate plans and elaborate schemes, but not giving people the simple solution that would allow people to move on. And again, that's because he doesn't know anything about critical thinking. He doesn't know anything about problem solving, because he only thinks about trying to impress others, and that's not what we need in a mayor. No, we need a mayor who can do more than participate in social media minstrel shows and creating drama like he did with this jab mandate. No, we need a mayor who can go out here and show that he is a strong leader, and show that he's a strong leader who can stand on his own, by understanding that if somebody's creating a policy that is detrimental to the city's business, then he needs to get rid of that policy very quickly. Because if your Eric Adams were a critical thinker like I am, he would have understood that this jab mandate is bad for New York's economy, because this jab mandate, it did not stop any sort of spread of COVID, and all it did was keep New York from making tax revenue in the first quarter of 2022, because all of those unvaccinated people who were put out of work, all of those people could have been generating city taxes for New York City, generating billions of dollars in revenue, and that was revenue that was desperately needed with the city in the middle of a budget deficit. So your Eric Adams basically is working against himself by continuing to keep this jab mandate in place, because this jab mandate, this is costing the city billions of dollars, and it's not preventing any sort of spread of COVID. All it is costing the city billions of dollars. And while we're losing billions of dollars, your Eric Adams is going out here cutting services like sanitation. And that again didn't need to be cut. All he had to do was end these mandates, and he would have plenty of money to be able to pay for things such as your sanitation, and he would also have money to go out here and further work on dealing with this crime issue and dealing with the mental health issue. He doesn't see how all this jab mandate is impeding his ability to make progress, because as long as this jab mandate is in place, all it is doing is holding back New York, and is preventing New York from moving forward. And that's what everybody has been trying to tell him, from I think your Kevin Durant to your people on ESPN. They've been trying to tell him that this mandate is working against him because it's keeping New Yorkers from working, and it's absolutely a stupid policy, because the whole thing is, if the rest of the country has unvaccinated people working and making money and generating revenue, then why can't New York City have unvaccinated people working and generating revenue, when it's already been proven that everybody can get the virus whether they're jabbed or not? So this is just showing that he's not really an effective leader, because an effective leader can admit when a policy isn't working, and they can admit that a policy is not functioning towards helping moving things forward. Because and all of those people, again, if they can work in New Jersey, they can work in Connecticut, and they've been working in Texas and Florida for 2 years straight, and nothing has gone on, then they should be able to work in New York City. Because in New York, if you can work in every other part of the country and every other part of the world, then that person should have a right to work right here in New York City. And it is, again, absolutely foolish to keep a policy in place when it's clear that it doesn't work. And this is a policy that is something the mayor could easily solve unilaterally, because Bill de Blasio made the decision unilaterally to make that policy, and your Eric Adams could do it, but he's just too much of a coward. He hides behind his health commissioner and other people, and again, that is not the behavior of a man, that is the behavior of a male, and only a weak male will go out here and hide behind other people instead of taking responsibility and taking the lead of the situation. This is, again, it just shows how weak your Eric Adams is, and he's starting out the gate stumbling. And when you see a guy going out here and stumbling out the gate, continuing to be belligerent like a black female, and then going to people like Lori Lightfoot, a certified failure, for advice, it doesn't bode well for your Eric Adams as a mayor, and it just shows how he really doesn't know what he's doing. Now, the cream of wheat man thinks that holding on to this policy is making him look strong, but optically it's making him look weak. And every day that he keeps this policy in place, it makes him look more and more incompetent. And the fact that he went out here and gave your athletes and entertainers a pass, and not working New Yorkers an ability to move on with their lives, again, shows how arbitrary this policy is, and shows how incompetent he is as a leader. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spencerella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com.